Sugar looks for the sweetest win of his career, Rampage pities the fool, and Diaz looks to strike down with force on Dream. This is the Fight Network's preview of UFC 114 and DREAM.14. Hey there, fight fans. My name is John Pollock, and welcome to the Fight Network's extensive preview of the UFC 114 event, as well as DREAM.14, both of which are taking place this weekend. In just a few minutes, John Ramdeen will join me as we break down both cards for you and take a look at the key aspects to be watching for. Dream will be headlined by an inter-promotional fight, while UFC 114 will be headlined by one of the most heated bouts in UFC history. In the main event of UFC 114, it's a light heavyweight grudge match as the coaches from the 10th season of Ultimate Fighter collide. 14-1-1 Sugar Rashad Evans has looked both sweet and sour in his last two outings, with a devastating knockout loss to Lyoto Machida last May, followed up by a dominant decision over Thiago Silva. He meets the 30-7 Quinton Rampage Jackson, who returns to the UFC after a 14-month layoff.
Interesting to see how, if Rashad has come all the way back from the knockout from Machida, and psychologically how he's feeling about that with a guy like Rampage who's a banger. He can hit. So both guys have the common fight with Chuck, similar outcomes. I think Rashad's wrestling is stronger than Rampage's. We saw Henderson control the early part of that fight with Rampage using some wrestling, so Rashad has that capability, although until his last fight we hadn't seen that from him. He tries to stand and bang with everybody.
I think both guys have a very good boxing. Of course, different styles, but very good boxing. So I can see that fighting going a lot on feet, but I'm not going to be surprised if Rashad tried to take this fight on the ground and ground and pound. That's maybe what I can see, but we never know. Fight is a fight in this top level, guys. Anything can happen.
The main event for UFC 114 will mark the spot where two of the most charismatic fighters in the light heavyweight division will finally meet to settle their score. Quinton Rampage Jackson and Rashad Evans were originally scheduled to square off on December 12, 2009 at UFC 107, but a casting call for the A-Team movie put this heated rivalry on the back burner. 6 months later, this grudge match will now take place. As a result of the weekly hype fest from Season 10 of The Ultimate Fighter, this fight has remained relevant. Emotions and attitudes from the television show have spilled into reality and continue to add fuel to an already blazing fire.
We got into it in the cage, and then on our own personal time, then he kind of said something to me, and then we got into it again, and then just being around each other from the show was just enough in itself. And then I even seen him a few times in Vegas, and we kind of got into it there. So it was just like, when you get into it on your personal time, when there's no cameras around, when there's just nobody but you and him on site, then there's a problem.
Each fighter is coming off a decision win and will look to make an emphatic statement with this bout. Though both men come from a strong wrestling background, Evans, the former NCAA Division I wrestler, holds an advantage over Rampage in the submission department.
I think it's going to be a little too much for Quinton, and on the ground especially, no contest whatsoever.
I think if Rashad goes out and uses and implements the All-American wrestling that he has, he could make it a long night for Rampage.
Evans continues to improve, training with the likes of Nate Marquardt, Shane Carwin, and George St. Pierre.
I expect Rashad to be too much for him. I think his boxing is going to be better. I think his takedowns are going to be better. You saw his last fight. He confused his opponent completely. When he was boxing, he was really setting up a takedown. When he was setting up a takedown, he was really going for the strikes.
While Quinton Jackson finds himself trading tips with Michael Bisping, the other big fish in the Wolf Slayer pond. Despite the advantage Evans may hold on the ground, the fight will start standing, and it is here where Jackson's calculated striking could make the difference. Prior to his sabbatical on the silver screen, Jackson showed the devastation of his crisp striking in his rebound fight with Wanderlei Silva, and once again in his win over Keith Jardine.
Definitely got to go with Rampage. You saw him do well against wrestlers before, and I think his punching power is going to be a significant advantage for him in that fight. He's got a great chin, so I think it's going to be a rough night for Rashad.
Mas minha torcida fica pro Quinton Jackson porque eu gosto do jeito que ele luta, é showman. Ele é cara que se preocupa com o público, cara que se preocupa com a luta, se preocupa com a performance. Então ele é atleta completo e é legal ver ele lutar, eu gosto de ver ele lutar.
Rampage is a strong, very, very good striker, and he's going to be a game fight.
Since both fighters are motivated by their hatred for each other, fans can anticipate an intense battle.
None of it's fabricated for numbers.
But there is something bigger waiting in the wing for the winner. A title shot against champion Mauricio Shogun Rua.
Eu acho que vai ser o Rampage ou Rashad, né? Porque eles estão credenciados a lutar pelo título hoje, né? Qualquer um dos dois eu luto, tranquilo.
John Ramdeen joins us, and John, the main event of UFC 114, Quinton Jackson and Rashad Evans, through the use of the Ultimate Fighter in primetime, one of the best-built main events in UFC history.
Of course, it's two of the best 205-pound fighters in the world right now. The drama is there, and again, both guys have a deep history in mixed martial arts, so it has all the makings of being one of the best 205-pound fights in the world.
How do you feel the layoff for Quinton Jackson is going to affect him? He hasn't fought for 14 months, dating back to March of last year when he defeated Keith Jardine.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be an issue. Rampage is motivated. He's always been motivated by money. The money's there for him now, and he's got a ton of experience, so I don't think it's going to be a factor for either guy.
Now, conversely, Rashad Evans trains with some of the top talents in the sport in Albuquerque, New Mexico. For this fight, he's brought in Strikeforce light heavyweight champion King Mo Lawal to prepare for Quinton Jackson, which is going to add a tremendous edge, in my opinion.
Yeah, King Mo has a very similar style to Quinton Jackson, of course, his wrestling base, as well as his big, heavy hands and his world-class conditioning. So it makes perfect sense why Rashad Evans would bring in a fighter like King Mo to try to replicate the same things that Quinton Jackson brings to the table.
Now, Greg Jackson, obviously notorious for his game plans. What do you see as this strategy? Because I see Evans being very cautious on his feet with Quinton Jackson.
I think for Rashad to win this fight, he's got to use the same strategy that Frankie Edgar did against BJ Penn. Use a lot of movement in and out, try not to get tagged by those big, heavy hands of Quinton Jackson. Try to use the same strategy Forrest Griffin did. Take away the legs, take away the power of Quinton Jackson, and just be durable and last the distance like that Keith Jardine did. So I think Rashad Evans, if he uses his movement, his speed, and avoid the big punches of Quinton Jackson, he can win this fight.
UFC President Dana White has stated that the winner of this fight will earn a light heavyweight championship shot against Mauricio Shogun Rua, who will be challenging for that come in this fight.
Well, again, if Rashad Evans wins, I think he's going to win on points, but if Quinton Jackson wants to win this fight, I think he has to stalk Rashad Evans and use those heavy hands to get a knockout, and I think he's very capable of doing that. So it just comes down to which guy can implement their game plan, but I think Rashad is the better of the fighters right now. I think he has too many tools, and I think he's too athletic for Quinton Jackson. I think he can avoid the big punches and win a unanimous decision, but Quinton Jackson could get the knockout.
In 185-pound action on Saturday night, Ultimate Fighter Season 3 winner, the 18-3 Michael the Count Bisping, takes on former IFL middleweight champion, the 11-3 Dan Miller, who's coming off of 2 consecutive losses. In the middleweight co-feature, British fighter Michael Bisping hopes to rebound from a loss to Vanderlei Silva at UFC 110 when he takes on Jamie Cruz Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt Dan Miller. Bisping won the Ultimate Fighter 3 in 2006 and has since compiled a notable list of victims, including Eric Schaefer, Matt Hamill, Chris Lieben, and Dennis Kang. Based out of the Wolfslair Academy in England, where he trains alongside Quinton Rampage Jackson and Czech Congo, Bisping has improved in all areas since his promotional debut. The confident Brit has demonstrated sharp boxing skills coupled with an underrated ground game. However, Bisping has struggled against some of the elite names in the sport, having dropped fights against Rashad Evans, Dan Henderson, and Vanderlei Silva. In order to get his career back on track, the former light heavyweight Cage Rage King will need to shine against a promising 185-pound prospect in Dan Miller. If he suffers defeat on Saturday night, it will mark Miller's 3rd straight loss in the UFC, which could lead to his release from the promotion. Meanwhile, Michael the Count Bisping is out to prove he belongs in the top tier of the middleweight division. Will the 31-year-old Brit be the first man to stop Miller, or will the 28-year-old pride of New Jersey make a case for himself as a future title contender?
John, in the co-feature, we have Michael Bisping taking on former IFL middleweight champion Dan Miller. Let's first chat about Bisping. He's coming off a loss to Vanderlei Silva that went the distance back in February. How did you feel Bisping looked in that fight and the changes that he's going to make coming into this fight?
I think Michael Bisping looked very good in that fight. A lot of people had Michael Bisping, not winning the fight, but very close to winning that fight. And you look at the fight before that against Dennis Kang. Dennis Kang at one point was considered one of the top middleweights in the world, and the fight previous to that, he loses to Dan Henderson. Dan Henderson, when he's at the top of his game, will take out most fighters in all of mixed martial arts. So no shame in losing to any of those fighters, Dan Henderson or Vanderlei Silva. Michael Bisping, for some reason, gets a bad rap. Not a lot of people care about his brash style or his antics, but he is one of the top middleweights in the world. I think the guy has skills in every single area, and he continues to improve, which is key for this day and age of mixed martial arts.
Now, Bisping, obviously a product of the Wolf Wolf Slayer Academy in England. He's been training with Quinton Jackson in preparation for this fight. And since the two have been working at the Wolf Slayer, this is the first time they've been on the same card together. How much does that add for a fighter when you have someone in the gym every day that's preparing for the same card at the same time?
Absolutely huge. The key is to peak at the same time, and when both fighters have each other to push and to make sure that they're peaking on the same day, it will only help each individual fighter.
For Dan Miller, he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt under Renzo Gracie. He's had some tough fights with Chael Sonnen and Damian Maia. What do you expect to see out of Miller, and can he work off his back in this fight?
I think he's going to have to try to take Michael Bisping down to the ground. Is going to be no easy task. Bisping has underrated wrestling skills. He has world-class jiu-jitsu and submission skills, as well as a stand-up game. I think Miller's going to try to play the top game, try to put Michael Bisping on his back, or if he pulls guard, try to go for the sweep and end up on top and try to work from there. Other than that, I don't see Dan Miller winning this fight, although it's mixed martial arts and anything can happen.
In heavyweight action at UFC 114, the undefeated Todd Duffy hopes to go to 7-0 when he meets Chicago native Mike Russo, who also has an accomplished record himself of 12-1. Russo made his UFC debut last August at UFC 102 with a unanimous decision victory over Justin McCulley. 18-3 light heavyweight Antonio Rogerio Nogueira steps into the octagon for the second time as he meets the 18-2-1 Jason Brills, who steps in as a late replacement for an injured Forrest Griffin, who had to pull out due to a shoulder injury. 21-3 Diego Nightmare Sanchez returns to the welterweight division following his December loss to former lightweight champion BJ Penn, and will be reintroduced to the 170-pound division with 12-0 John Hathaway, who's competing inside the octagon for the fourth time.
John, in a heavyweight bout on the main card, we've got Todd Duffy coming off that explosive knockout victory over Tim Hague. He's taking on Michael Russo, and Duffy making some interesting comments heading into this fight, stating that he feels he has been overhyped heading into this.
Very important for fighters to be grounded and understand that, you know, lots of people have talked about Duffy and how he has explosive power, and this guy could be the next heavyweight champion down the road. Duffy, you know, taking a page out of Nogueira and maybe George St. Pierre's book. You go back and you look at Nogueira, little Nogueira's fight with Sokaju. He was a minus 1,400 favorite going into that fight, and of course he ended up getting knocked out. In 2010, everybody's good in mixed martial arts. You can't believe the hype, even if it's your own hype. You have to stay grounded and make sure your eye is on the prize.
You mentioned Antonio Rogerio Nogueira, which segues into our next fight. This card obviously took a blow as Forrest Griffin was scheduled to fight Nogueira, but a shoulder injury puts Jason Brills into that slot. Is that a case of maybe we see an underdog having a chance in this fight?
It happened to Nogueira once, and I don't think it's going to happen a second time. This guy is one of the best 205-pound fighters in the world. Go back and look at his fight with Shogun. I think he won the fight with Shogun. A lot of people will disagree, but I think he did win that fight. He has awesome skills. His hands are there. His jiu-jitsu's there. His wrestling might not be up to par, but when you have the jiu-jitsu skills of Nogueira and the chin of Nogueira, you know, anything can happen. This guy is a superstar, and I'm sure one day he'll challenge for the UFC light heavyweight title.
And also Diego Sanchez moving back to 170 pounds, coming off of his loss to BJ Penn. Was it a wise move for Sanchez moving up to 170?
Well, he said he's willing to fight in either weight class, and I think that makes sense. Whatever fills your pockets with money, and this is, I think, a showcase fight for Diego Sanchez, you know, coming off that BJ Penn loss. It was a destructive loss, so for him to come in and take out John Hathaway in an impressive fashion, I'm sure another high-profile fight will be waiting in the wings for Diego Sanchez.
In a preliminary bout that will air on television prior to the pay-per-view, Ultimate Fighter 7 winner Amir Sadala, who has put together a 3-1 record since his June 2008 debut, will face the 12-0-1 stun gun Dong Hyun Kim, who has rattled off wins over Jason Tan, Matt Brown, and TJ Grant in the UFC.
One of the most successful Asian fighters to emerge over the last number of years has been Dong Hyun Kim. With 8 impressive victories, including 5 stoppages in Japan's DEEP organization, Kim is quickly climbing the ranks as one of the division's top dogs. The Korean fighter has amassed an unblemished 12-0-1 record and is riding a 4-fight unbeaten streak inside of the world-famous Octagon, and has an opportunity of a lifetime when he meets Ultimate Fighter 7 winner Amir Sadala. In his last outing, the stun gun-dominated Canadian fighter TJ Grant to garner a unanimous decision victory. Although Kim does possess a solid ground and submission game, it is his striking abilities that may set him apart from the rest of the welterweights. Taking on and beating a fighter like Sadala in impressive fashion live on Spike TV could do wonders for the 28-year-old's career. Although Sadala may have only a handful of professional fights under his belt, his skill set is not to be taken lightly. If the Korean can outmaneuver the American and implement his game plan and perform well, A shot at George St. Pierre's welterweight strap may come sooner than later.
John, Amir Sadala and Dong Hyun Kim will be able to see this one for free on television. Amir Sadala, only his 5th professional fight, which is quite amazing when you consider the level of competition at that weight class in the UFC.
Oh, I agree, but I feel very bad for Amir Sadala in this fight because he's taking on, in my opinion, a guy that will challenge one day for the UFC welterweight title. Dong Hyun Kim is simply spectacular. Excellent takedown defense, stellar hands and striking abilities, and he continues to become a well-rounded fighter. You go and you look at his fight with Carl Parisian, you'll see what I mean. The guy has skills in all areas, which is very exciting to watch a fighter like Dong Hyun Kim.
Not to mention, he's amassed this record very quietly, and this seems to be one of those breakout fights should Kim look impressive in this fight.
I agree, and if you haven't seen Dong Hyun Kim fight, you can watch him fight on the Best of Deep because the guy is simply spectacular.
Some fantastic play-by-play on that show as well. Your prediction, Sadala and Kim?
I think Dong Hyun Kim is just too experienced, he's too good, and I think he's going to take out Amir Sadala by second or third round TKO.
In lightweight action on Saturday night, Ultimate Fighter Season 8 winner Efrain Escudero will bring his 12-1 record into the octagon as he meets the 12-3 Dan Lozon. Both men are coming off losses from this past January. In another preliminary card bout this weekend, 23-8-2 lightweight Melvin Gillard, who has had his hand raised in 3 of his last 4, will square off with the 8-2 UFC debuting Waylon Lowe, who takes the spot of Thiago Tavares, who suffered an elbow injury in training. In light heavyweight action, 10-2 Luis Can will enter the cage opposite former kickboxer Cyril the Snake Diabate, who has been victorious in 9 of his last 10, with his last loss coming courtesy of light heavyweight champion Mauricio Shogun Rua in 2006. 28-12-1 Aaron Riley, a lightweight who had his first UFC bout all the way back at UFC 37, meets the 7-1-1 Joe Brahmer, who was submitted in his UFC debut last December by Mark Bocek. And the card rounds out with the 11-4 Jesse Forbes, a product of the 3rd season of The Ultimate Fighter, colliding with the 14-6 Ryan Jensen. UFC 114 isn't the only marquee event for fans this weekend. When we return, we'll break down the DREAM.14 card from the Saitama Super Arena in Japan.